far-right riots up and down the UK. Whether we're past the worst of it, who can say? But I think for some time, the fascist right is going to be a massive problem in this country, and indeed in other parts of the world, in Europe and in the USA too. I think it's come as a shock to everybody, the violence and the extent of the rioting and the willingness to act violently and to try and intimidate people off the streets. I was recently on a demonstration, a Nazi, trying to put a counter protest up to the Nazis at Rotherham. And to be honest, they came there with blood in mind. They were a murderous bunch, and they tried to set fire to the hotel where asylum seekers were stopping. And they weren't bothered whether they killed them. But it might come as a shock to some people. The fascist right and fascist violence isn't something that we haven't seen before in this country. And today, I want to have a talk to Paul Symonds. Paul was a member of the NUM. He was a miner at Frickley Pit. And he was always a socialist militant, a good activist. And Paul found himself confronting a Nazi threat in Leeds in the 1990s when he went there to be an organizer for the SWP. Paul, do you want to tell us what took you to Leeds, please, and what the threat of the Nazis was in Leeds?
Yeah, well, after the pit closures, our pit closed in '93, and I was sort of asked if I'd go into Leeds to help with the strategy of fighting back the Nazis. There'd already been a number of attacks on socialist paper sales. The sort of genesis for that was that the Nazis were trying to organise in Leeds by holding public meetings and things, and socialists basically picketed them and basically disrupted their operation and stopped them being able to reach that wider audience and organise public meetings in Leeds city centre, without having to run a gauntlet. They didn't like it, and so apart from the racist attacks that were being carried out in Leeds by the Nazis at the time, socialists very quickly came into view for them, in terms that we were the ones that were standing between them and reaching a wider audience.
Yeah, and what was the? I mean, how far were they prepared to go? They were obviously a nasty bunch, but they used violent tactics. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as everybody knows, socialists are usually out on a Saturday morning selling various newspapers. Socialist Workers' Party being one of them, and I remember at the time, and we were getting our paper sales violently attacked on a regular basis, and this used to culminate in having our stalls turned over, people physically being attacked. There were one, I wasn't actually there, but there were one pregnant woman who had a cigarette thrown, lit cigarette. Someone tried to stuff a lit cigarette into her face. So it was, their modus operandi was to terrorise us and to drive us off the streets. We needed to have a reaction to that. And so therefore we came together. I had no previous experience dealing with Nazis. And don't get me wrong, I've been on enough anti-Nazi marches, organised cultures from our village to stop the Nazis marching in Huddersfield, I think, Halifax, on that level. But in terms of being in the eye of the storm, in terms of coming up with a strategy of dealing with this, it was I was very much learning on the job.
Yeah, I mean, when we get the rise of fascism, it generates a discussion on the left about how to deal with the problem. And I mean, there's basically two solutions that have got some sort of history. One is that what we should do is get a group of, they're all supposed to be tough guys. We'll recruit some big hefty people to go and confront them. We'll ambush them and we'll beat them up. So that's, it used to be called squadism, where we track them down and bash them up. And then there's the other argument, which is, oh no, we shouldn't do that. We're playing into their hands. Better off if we leave them alone and leave the police to deal with it. And I think you can see that today, those same sort of sentiments, the two poles of attraction for the left, which way should we go? But I think we've got a bit of experience now about to deal with it. And you and your comrades in Leeds, you rejected both the squadist idea of fighting them toe to toe and the idea of basically leaving it to the authorities to deal with. And you came up with a different strategy. Do you want to talk about why you rejected those two strategies, why you don't think they work, and what you did instead?
Yeah, all the strategies you've just outlined were all prescient at the time in Leeds, because there were other socialists outside the SWP and the Labour Party, etc. They were all, we were all trying to grapple with this Nazi problem, and I want to emphasise Nazi problem because this is not just semantics. We were dealing with an organisation in Leeds who called themselves C18, Combat 18. And if anybody wants to know what Combat 18 stands for, combat is obviously, and 18 is 1 for A in the alphabet, Adolf, and 18 in the alphabet, Hitler. I think that's right anyway. I hope it is. But anyway, that's what it's meant to mean. So these weren't people, don't call me a Nazi. These lived and breathed fascism. These, the tattoos, the prison sentences, the thuggery, were all there to be seen. So when I got to Leeds, one of the first things is one of the strategies you outlined that let the police do it. Now, we used to have big paper sales in Leeds on Lambs Lane in Leeds city centre. And we would have to, just through safety in numbers, like normally you might have 3, 4, 5 people on a paper sale. What we had to do is concentrate the paper sales, and we had to have 30, 40 of us on the streets on one sale. Just safety in numbers, that aspect. But they'd still come along, and basically use us as punch bags. And because we had this strategy, I'll just let police deal with it. Police used to stand there and watch, And so one of the things I did, I don't know whether it were instinctual coming from miners' strike when we were on picket lines fighting police, but one of the things that we decided, well, I were adamant, is that there's no way you're going to be on a paper sale and see a comrade attacked and just stand there with the paper, because this was a political thing. This was, we better not get into a fist fight with them. But what we decided, I decided, not just me, there were committees and, and everything. But we decided that, number one, if they attacked us and we were there, if you were stood next to a comrade getting attacked, you fought back. You defended yourself. And so, number one, yes, we will defend ourselves. Don't get me wrong, it's fight or flight. But if there's, if you can defend yourself, you defend yourself. If you see a comrade being attacked, you defend that comrade. And if that requires you to use physical violence to stop that, prevent that attack, that's what we did. And that's what we did. And straight away, that lifted the mood of everybody. Because we weren't just going to stand there on a Saturday morning and be punch bags for these people. So, number one, we would retaliate. I mean, I did once sort of tongue-in-cheek mention to a comrade that he should maybe bring his golf clubs to paper sale. And if there were any questions, I say we're going straight to golf. He declined that invitation, but that's the sort of, that sort of level it was. And it was airy, it was scary. I've been in some scary situations during miners' strike, and there was scary times during that for for pickets, but this was scary as well. And so I don't want to underestimate the bravery of the comrades that used to turn out each and every Saturday.
Yeah, but you went for a more of a political strategy, didn't you, across Leeds? Because I remember two people I knew, actually, a couple who I knew, Adrian and his partner. I can't remember her name, but they had the car burnt out in front of their house, and so it was getting pretty serious.
No,
And
I
you
mean,
know that fight or flight issue became more pressing, didn't it?
you see, when you were dealing with these people, apart from using violence to defend yourself, self-defense, that is where we drew the line. You know, we could have got groups of men and women together who would have gone out and tracked these people down and kicked their doors down. We you know, there were enough anger and there were enough of us to do that. That would have been, and there were people on the left that were doing things like that. But our whole aim was to let's just rewind a little bit. One of the things that the media and the press love is to label the right-wing thugs and label left-wing thugs, and so the passers-by go plague on both your houses. You're both thugs. You're both as bad as each other. We wanted to avoid that, and so we had to work hard at creating. We had to work hard at creating a narrative where not we were the victims, because it weren't about us. You know what I mean? We had to create a narrative that we didn't want Nazis roaming around Leeds city centre every Saturday morning, beating people up and attacking people. So we had to somehow not get labelled this. So we had to look for a political solution. Now, anybody that's looking at these riots, at these, I mean, it's all over. You know, I mean, it makes me cry, to be honest. You go on Facebook, Twitter, and the rest of them, you know, and people calling for harsh prison sentences and and in fact, you had a great post up today, by the way, on Facebook. I really enjoyed that. You were spot on. But you know, not thinking that the state's going to deal with them. So we had to find a way of doing this. Now they made it pretty easy for us in many ways, because the attacks were happening, and you rightly so Adrian and I do forget her name now. They lived in Chapeltown in Leeds, and they got their house smashed up, got the car set on fire. This was routine, by the way, not routine every year, but every weekend we were sort of on guard that, you know, because they would track us down, they'd find out where we live, and they'd do a terror attack on us. And you know, the socialists at the time involved, you know, absolute brilliant people. You know, you do find in these situations, you know, the wheat from the chaff gets sorted, and we had some comrades in Leeds that you know, are heroes, to be fair, what they faced and the patience they had in dealing with it. But our strategy was simply, let's label these thugs what they are, Nazis. Never mind racists and things like that. No, the Nazis. And people, I think, the message today for people is this, is it's beyond racism. You'll have racists who hate Nazis. You know, you'll have soft racists or against immigrants and things like this. But there's a line they won't cross, and that's the, you know, Nazi thuggery and Z Kyle salutes. You know, the grandparents and that would have fought in Second World War. When you've got people lifting the shirts up, sewing tattoos of swastikas and they've had done, and Z Kiley, you know, even soft racists, even people that want immigration controls, are people that'll laugh at a racist joke. They would draw a line there and you can get them on the streets against these people. And that was our strategy. And it sort of culminated in a comrade's house being attacked one Saturday night, and they put bricks through the window. They had a little kid asleep in a cot in that room. You know, it could have been much worse, but the dog, you know, this is in a respectable part of Leeds. This weren't some, you know, weren't some dingy back street. This were on a residential housing estate, cul-de-sac, upper cul-de-sac, semi-detached houses, gardens, and they went up and they trashed their house. The dog dipped completely in paint. You know, it must have took them ages, and then they were, and then the brick, the put all the windows. They actually put all the windows through in the house at the same time. So they must have had the house surrounded. So every window came in the house at the same time. They jumped in the vans and the cars and drove off. It was tough, and for that family, it was very, very tough. And but we were down there the next morning. We cleaned everything up. We got the painter. We rallied around, etc. And so this is why they were making it easy for us, because it gave us something that we could now, you know, the consistent attacks that we're doing gave us the opportunity to broaden it into, you know, so we involved counsellors, vicars, and we went there, and this attack got, you know, journalists, and we over this specific attack, this came on back of a number of other attacks, but because there was a baby involved, a child, which we're lucky not to have been killed, to be honest, you know, because it was asleep in a cot in a room, and all the windows came through, and so they were devastated, and we managed to call a public meeting in Leeds Town Hall. Now that might just sound, oh, call a meeting. Now, you know, this was the left trying to organise a meeting in the town hall. Let me tell you, you go and try and do that, it ain't the easiest thing in the world. You know, they don't want likes of us holding meetings in you know, in their you know, big palaces or whatever, you know. I mean, they didn't want it, but we, because of work we were doing among MPs, sympathetic journalists, the religious community, building up alliances, you know, outside of his own ranks, because that's what you've got to do. You've got to build them alliances outside of yourselves. You know, it's no good looking inwards and trying to think you're going to deal with this. No, that's not how it works. So you've got to build these alliances. And today, the left is going to have to do this all over again. And this is where, to, you know, you need this political strategy. And this culminated in this meeting, and I was shocked as anybody. When we turned up, we had the mother of the child who were there. We managed. She didn't want to go on there. We had to persuade her for the greater good. But she went with the baby on the knee, anti-Nazi League sticker on, and the thing is that the cameras were there. The cameras, the newspaper, the room were full. I was so surprised, because we had trade unionists there, trade union banners there, trades councils, and it you know, it looked like a meeting that people like us are barred from. They mind organising, and it was great. It was full. There were people that, and the way it was pitched. We had somebody in the chair, Brian Richardson, who was fabulous. You know, non-confrontation, non-aggressive. You know, basically appealing to that audience. This went out on Yorkshire TV that night. This went out onto Yorkshire TV, millions of people watching it. And that was one of the things, you know, I'll be honest with you, I punched the air out of it because I thought we've managed to do this. We've managed to break that narrative of left versus right, because we brought it. The left had actually married the anti-Nazi cause with ordinary people, and everything changed after that. And don't get me wrong, it was a process. It weren't just that one thing, because this is what we were doing on the day-to-day. But we were then able, we demoralized them basically. We demoralized them. I can remember them. I thought we were going to get some kickback after, you know, I thought there was going to be a backlash after that went out. And I thought it would be the following Saturday, because it went out on Yorkshire TV. And anyway, following Saturday, come and went, and no problem, you know what I mean? But following Saturday, I remember turning up for a paper sale, walking down Lands Lane, and shit, there were loads of them out there selling whatever rag they sell, you know, BNP or whatever. They were out in streets, and there were a lot of them. When I say a lot of them, there were about 30 of them, because I walked through them, and I was trying to count them as I walked through, because our paper sale was just at the bottom. But they come and attack the sale. We had a big sale that day. Just, I don't know why. I think everybody, you know, and we basically chased them out of town. And it weren't just us. You'd got shoppers, because this is like prime shopping time, you know what I mean? You've got shoppers there spitting at them, screaming Nazis off our street, you know what I mean? There were no left and right. It was everybody rounded on them. And well, I said chased them out of town. We probably chased them to near this pub, like, but this is it. And it turned around from then. The attacks stopped. Our paper sales, for instance, because using it as a barometer, we'd had to stop all the paper sales all over Leeds in Beeston and Haredales and things, because you'd only have 2 or 3 people and thing, and they drive around in cars and would attack them. So we had to stop doing all that, and we just had to have a big central paper sale in Leeds. And gradually we was able to start rolling it out again. Beeston were a particular target for them. And, we got Beeston back up and running sale, and we actually started having 2 shifts on up there. So this is our tide turned. But it was very frightening. It was, comrades were absolutely brilliant. And, the bravery and commitment they showed were one where we actually did turn the tide against them. So I think that strategy, driving a wedge between them, keep them isolated, keep the hardcore isolated. The hardcore of them, they're the ones you've got to keep isolated. They're the ones our job is to stop them reaching a wider audience. I know it's a lot different now with social media, and I'm left scratching my head along with everybody else. But the strategy has to stay the same, because it's a successful strategy. Did I think we'd won forever? I never thought that. Fascism's there. It's a part of capitalism. It's a weapon that they pull out when they need it to divide us. So the job was never going to be done. But in Leeds in the 1990s, the mid-1990s, we were able to turn the tables with a good political strategy, in my opinion.
That's great, Duke. Thanks very much for that. I just want one last question, really. The fact that these riots, they are called, like on the internet, so they're getting publicity. They do it through Telegram, and word spreads around, social media. It quickly flicks around, and people turn up to events, and they get a lot of people into like city centres like Hull and Birmingham, etc. And I mean, I find it really tragic that you see young boys. I mean, like when I was at Rotherham, there was young lads coming off the estate on the mountain bikes. What's going on? And then because it's exciting and it's a fight with coppers, they're like joining in, and they don't really know. But of course, they get praised to ilk by the fascists for turning up and all our young fighters fighting for freedom and fighting for the country and all this. And I just wondered, as a final thing, it must hurt you when you remember what the South Yorkshire was like with the steelworks and the mines and go back to, I don't want to spend long on miners' strike, but women against pit closures. It was kind of glorious working class resistance to the system. You did feel part of a community, rough as it was. You felt as if you had a common solidarity, which I think that organic link to the Labour Party, to the Labour movement, not the Labour Party, but the trade unions and so on. A lot of people working in call centres, self-employed. Would you have, would you have a sort of sentence or two of advice to somebody who's thinking of getting involved with the far right?
Advice, a little bit of advice. Yeah, listen, John, everything. You see, the talk about saving this country, every single benefit that working people have, white working people have, has come through Labour struggles. They've come through trade unions, everything. And I'm talking about even getting weekly pay. And people might not know this, but they used to pay your weekly pay in a pub, and foreman used to go, and his lackeys would get a bit more, and you'd be buying him drink, and basically half the wages were spent in pub before they got on to share money with the wife for groceries. The trade unions actually fought to get weekly wages paid properly. That was done through Labour movement. People working an 8-hour day were done through Labour movement. People who think, oh, I'll have this week, it's the big thing. Oh, the weekend starts here Friday. The week. Where do they think working people got the weekend off from? Do you think that, the Elon Musk of this world, 100 years ago, rolled over in bed and think, what, they're a good lot, really. Smell a bit, but we'll give them weekend off. They might go and get a bath or something in river. No. It was dragged out of them kicking and screaming. And in terms of a task, in terms of we can't go out in this country because they'll just take the things above. This was a worldwide thing, getting an 8-hour day and a 40-hour week. This was what International Workers' Day were about. It can be done. It can go across borders. But everything, this is, the NHS, turning up, with a broken leg and getting it treated for free, or somebody that's got an inherited disease being treated long-term for free, with basically free drugs. This hasn't come out of thin air. Turning your taps on and clean water coming. Here's a story not many people know about the pits. When I was a kid growing up, you used to see miners coming home from work in the pit muck, and they used to have a tin bath, and the wife had filled tin bath up. There was no running hot water. They had to heat a boiler up with a fire under it and get the bath ready. I remember seeing that as a kid. And do you know why the miners used to come home like that? Because there were no pithead baths, and the management wouldn't pay for pithead baths. So you went to work, they sent you home in your muck, and it was unions that demanded we be able to get a shower and change your clothes before we went home from working down a pit. That came through unions. Holiday pay comes through unions. Sickness pay comes through unions. And somebody will say, oh no, NHS didn't come through unions, it will come through Labour Party. Yeah. Who do you think, what Labour Party? It was unions. You know what I mean? Unions created Labour Party. So the thing is, I'd say to people like Tommy Robinson and that, and I won't swear, but Farage, that's as bad as swearing saying his name. But I tell you now, the one thing that has positively affected working people's lives is trade unions. why don't you ever hear Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage saying, get out there and join a union, get out there and support that picket line? You know, Farage would have police sent against you on a picket line. Tommy Robinson, God knows, you probably don't even know what a picket line in a union is, but that's how much they care about you. The one thing that can change your standard of living, create a situation where you've got time off work, minimum wage, this, that. Just, look, there's tons and tons and tons of stuff that's wrong in this world, but it ain't the far right that's got the answers. They've got nothing but death, destruction, and despair for us all. You might be able to go and burn an hotel down with immigrants, but it's your doors that are going to get kicked off. It's your wife that's going to realise you've just burnt a baby to death and your life's going to be over. It cuts all these ways. They don't care. They don't care about them young men in Rotherham, you know, after steelworks closed and pits closed. They said they care, but they don't care. You know, and they're being lied to. And the one thing, and this is the acid test, the one thing that changes people's lives for the better is unions. Why aren't they promoting unions? Why aren't they promoting the very thing that'll make working people's lives better? They're not, because they're not interested in their lives. They're not slightly interested in it. But this is the argument the left has to get out there and win. You know, build the trade unions. Look at, you know, Elon Musk. What's that fella from Amazon? I can't remember his name. Bezos. Thingy at Facebook. I tell you one thing they've got in common. They all hate unions. And why do they hate unions? Because unions can change the dynamics. You know, unions can take some of that money that keeps skimming off us, and we can pull it back to build roads, to build hospitals, to employ doctors and teachers, to make all our lives better. That's what we can do, and that's something that these Nazis will never tell you, and they won't tell you because they're not interested. They're bankrolled by the same billionaires who do anything to stop a union.
Paul, that was fantastic. Thanks ever so much. And we'll talk again soon. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, buddy.